Thank you. So hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar brought to you by the Canadian Professional Sales Association and our accredited partner Shane Gibson of Professional Sales Academy. Today's webinar is called Selling and Succeeding in Turbulent Economic Times. Many sales organizations and entrepreneurs are concerned about how they're going to weather in today's global financial storm. In today's webinar, B2B sales specialist and social selling expert Shane Gibson will share with you the strategies to survive and then thrive in any economic condition. Shane Gibson is a CPSA accredited partner and Vancouver-based international speaker, author, and B2B and enterprise sales trainer who has addressed over 200,000 people over the 25 years on stages in North America, Southern Africa, India, Dubai, Malaysia, and South America. He is known as one of Canada's foremost speakers on the topic of social media and sales performance. As a trainer, coach, and motivational speaker, he combines a diverse background in Salesforce leadership, new entrepreneur development, and extensive sales and leadership coaching. Shane is the co-founder and facilitator of the Enterprise Sales Professional Certification Program, delivered in partnership with the Canadian Professional Sales Association, and has been named number 5 on the Forbes.com list of the top 30 social salespeople in the world. Please note that all of today's attendees have been placed on mute for the duration of the webinar, and that if we have time for questions at the end of the webinar, you may do so during the end using the question function in your GoToWebinar dashboard. I know Shane has a very packed webinar today, so he's agreed that if we don't have time at the end of the webinar, we can address them at a later date or online. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Shane to start.
Thank you, Ruplan. And yeah, absolutely. Please do post your questions. What I'll be doing is, if we don't get a chance to answer all of your questions, I'm going to do a follow-up video that we can send out to you to answer your Q&A after the session as well. So today I want to talk about selling and succeeding in turbulent economic times. And I think it's a very relevant topic for today's environment. This is one of my kind of favorite quotes from Jack Welch. And he says, if the rate of change on the outside exceeds the rate of change on the inside of your organization, the end is near. And that's really what I want to focus on today is how do we adapt our approach to the rapid and continual dynamic change in the marketplace. I've had an opportunity to live and work in South Africa many years ago during a very turbulent time. In addition to that, I've traveled the world speaking and training in all kinds of different countries. And one of the things I'll say about North America is that our change economically, culturally, socially, technologically moves a little slower typically than some of these developing nations. And so as a group of people here in North America, we've got an incredible amount of abundance and opportunity, but we're also not quite as used to things shifting rapidly underneath our feet, so to speak. And so what I'm going to talk about here today is how do we move into that ability to adapt and thrive in this changing environment. But I also want to talk about the fact that what we're going through today, the reasons why we're going through what we're going through today may be a bit unique than historically it's occurred, but the reality is we've been here before. So I want to start off a little bit talking about economic cycles and really about, when is the ideal time to be really focusing on sales and when is the time to regroup? And so let's take a little bit of a look at history here together first. So let's look at economic cycles. So if we go back to 1949 to 1950, the economy was declared a general disaster, and then it immediately took off again. Okay, so I want to look at this pattern here of negative news and then how quickly we rebound. In 1957, the US Treasury Secretary George Humphrey said, the coming depression will curl your hair. It's going to be worse than the crash in 1929. Soon after that, the economy rebounded. In 1962, the repeat crash was on the horizon at the same time the Cuban Missile Crisis erupted, but once again, the economy turned around. In 1970, uncertainty was in the air. Chrysler was on the brink of bankruptcy. Penn Central went bankrupt. There was Vietnam riots, and again, the economy turned around. In 1974 and 75, the worst decline since 1929, double-digit inflation, there was an oil embargo, 50% of the North American population expected another Great Depression, and then the economy took off again. 1981 to 1982, the recession was even worse, and once again, it rebounded. interesting kind of note, my father, who was my #1 mentor and helped me get into this business, launched his speaking and sales training career in 1981 at the bottom of the economy, and actually toured Canada talking about this topic that I'm sharing with you today, which is how to survive and thrive in tough economic times. So it's all kind of cyclical. So in 1991, we bottom out, and by 1994, we moved into full recovery again. Now, 2002, after the market meltdown, and of course, previous to that in 2000, we had the dot-com crash. We had 2001, we had 9/11. And after the market meltdown with an unprecedented pessimism regarding North American security and corporate ethics on Wall Street, what does the economy do? It turns around again. In 2007 to 2009, the subprime crisis occurred, of course, and it was declared that we were in the Great Recession. It was going to be worse than the recession of the Depression, and gloom and doom was everywhere. And then we've experienced an unprecedented 11-year run of dominantly bull markets in the marketplace and growth. And here we are again in 2020. We've got the COVID-19 pandemic, and we've declared a global recession. And people are talking gloom and doom again, how it's not going to recover, that this is the worst it's ever been, that it'll change the way we are. And it's going to change the way we operate. But the reality is it's cyclical. And if anything history shows us, we have the ability to rebound as a community and as an economy and reinvent ourselves. We're very, very adaptable creatures as human beings, especially if we work together. So a typical economic crisis or economic cycle looks something like this. So typically, when you know you're at the top of economy, is at a period of excessive optimism. So people say things like, you can't lose in Toronto real estate. You know, you've got your home you own outright, leverage that to get a second one, then get a second and third mortgage to get a third, then borrow money from friends and family and leverage yourself again and rent it out. You can't lose in real estate, right? You hear people say things like this, right? And it's a different tune today. And so what happens is when you're at the top of an economy, even a personal economy as an individual, and many of us have been there, I know I've been there, where I'm not just spending the money I'm making, I'm already spending the money I think I'm gonna make. And so what happens is something has to pull back the reins. Now today, literally a 4-week period, we've run down to the bottom, so to speak. But in many cases, it takes a bit longer, but some of the same things happen. So what happens, number one, is when we're overextended, usually someone has to give us help to stop our spending. So for me, it's my banker. I'm like, hey, I want to expand. I want to get a new office. I think I want a new car as well. And I'm going to take that holiday. And boy, that new suit looks awesome. And then my banker says, hey, guess what? I can't give you any more credit, Shane, because your income to your debt ratio is out of whack. The economy is, you're carrying, you're exposed from a real estate perspective. So we're going to pull things back. And so they help me stop spending. And then when an economy gets suppressed across the board, basically there's a bunch of things in place that pull back credit, that pull back the ability to expand beyond maybe what's reasonable. So credit and cash dry up. Then there's bulging inventories in some areas. And we'll see with a lot of e-commerce companies, of course, who, outdoor equipment companies, anything to do with travel, whole bunch of things, fashion, all of these things from perspective, those industries have bulging inventory right now. Production slows, prices slip. There's a little bit of worry. Buying dries up more. The consumer loses confidence. So does the business owner. Layoffs begin, more worry. Here's something interesting. The average person has more money in their savings account at the bottom of the economy than they do at the top, on average, in a typical economic cycle. We put off buying, then there's excessive fear, then there's panic. And how we know we're at the bottom of an economy where we've really leveled off, one of the things is excessive pessimism, where when you look in the news today, I spent an hour last night looking for positive news, just to see how much positive news is out there. And what I found was for about every 20 negative pieces of news, whether it's about the pandemic or business in general, or just negative things about politicians, there was one positive. And so this is a good sign from a news cycle perspective, because newspapers know what sells is negativity and sensationalism. So just know that that's part of what's going on out there. So we hit that excessive pessimism. Now, what stops things from bottoming out and just continuing to plummet is, number one, is not everyone loses in an economic downturn. So we take a look at someone like spud.ca here in Vancouver, who is a food delivery business who delivers organic food and groceries to your house. And then this from perspective is that all of a sudden where they were doing well, they're doing extremely well. We look at high tech companies that help companies move into the cloud and work remote. And from this perspective, they are absolutely doing extremely well. So number one, there's some markets that are doing well, but in addition to that, what also happens, what stops things from plummeting is what we call bargain basement money. These are people who know that there's deals in the marketplace, and they start to buy up stocks and invest in real estate, buy companies, go through mergers, and that levels us off. Are we at the bottom completely right now? I can't say. Do I know that we're near the bottom and we're gonna have an upswing? Whether it looks like a V or a W, or we bounce up and go down a bit, I'm not sure, but we will be on our way up. And so some of the things that you wanna watch for as a sales professional and entrepreneur is, number one, look at the fact is that there's going to be a little bit more buying in some areas, then some hiring, and we're already seeing this in certain sectors, right? As people retrench and figure out how they're going to re-expand. More buying, we're going to see some markets opening up, some cities opening up, some social distancing rules being relaxed in areas that we can. More confidence, more hiring, more buying, higher prices, fear of higher prices, real demand, lots of positive news, a scramble to produce, a scramble to buy, and boom, there we are. We're at the top of the economy, and we are golden, and we're excessively optimistic about the fact that we can't lose in our industry. And these are the cycles we go through, and this is what's happened historically as I went through all those ups and downs. It's about every 7 years on average, we go through these for different reasons. So we've been here before, and I think that's really important to realize. We're in the middle of it, it seems like eternity, but we will come out of this. So let's talk about how to profit in it. Number one is, and this is a quote from Ryan Holiday, and he wrote the book, The Obstacle is the Way. And I love this quote, and this through a personal crisis. The last economic downturn actually wiped out pretty well my entire net worth and everything I had, and in 2008. And in addition to that, I had a personal marriage go sideways. A lot of it had related to that. And it was a very frustrating time. And as I was going through this challenge, Jeff Booth, the CEO of Build Direct, gave me this book from Ryan Holiday called The Obstacle is the Way. And he talked about the fact that the obstacle isn't the opposite of your path to success. It's actually part of your path to success. What's gonna make you better. It's gonna help you learn. If you're willing to look at yourself, it's gonna help you learn and develop and grow. So I like this quote from Ryan. Here's what he said, and it really helped me. The obstacle in the path becomes the path. Never forget, within every obstacle is an opportunity to improve our condition. So some of this is we've got to look at improving our conditions means the ability to pivot. So the shift. So what's out? Let's talk about what's out. And this happened overnight. Usually these major shifts in trends happen in 5 and 10 years, but it's happened in a month because we've been forced to shift the way we do business and communicate and socialize. So what's out is features and selling from a sales perspective. So if I'm going to get you on a Zoom call, I'm going to talk about my features, I'm going to sell you, I'm going to pitch you, I'm going to probe you. That's gone. Your buyer does not have patience for that. Now we're looking at what's in is helping an ROI. How can I help, and how can I help you get a return on investment and actually move your business forward? What's out right now is analog and in real life selling. So this is just using the phone or meeting someone in person, the need to travel, to cut deals. That's gone. What's happening now is it's digital selling, it's remote selling, and it's rapid communication responsiveness. Typically, our clients have been focused on growing and or sustaining in their existing market. Okay, that's kind of where they've been at. That's the ideal client. Today, the ones we want to look for are the ones that are adapting and redeploying, and how we can help them do that. What's out is I'm going to invest in my existing client base and expand my existing client base and niche. Today, it's actually about how do I streamline and how am I going to be nimble as the market shifts. What's out is the lone wolf salesperson, the lone wolf marketer, the lone wolf organization or individual in a company. What's in is those people I see succeeding and embracing opportunity, or at least staying sane in this situation, is they're leveraging their positive connections and leveraging their personal networks, and they're expanding their networks. They're investing in them. What's out is growing existing markets. What's in is finding new market niches that are rebounding already and succeeding. And what's out is the status quo, what's always worked and what's trending, because that's all been interrupted. What's in is experimenting and trail breaking, finding new ways. If you ever had a wacky way of you thought might work for prospecting, or a new product launch, or a different type of partner, or a different way of communicating with customers, this is a good time to try it. Because what I found is that people are more open right now to trying new things because the foundation has been shook. So successful selling today, I'm going to talk about 5 things. Number 1 is process-based and it works remotely, is focused on the right markets, adds real value in relationship. Okay, so think about, how can I be of help? That's what people want to hear. They don't want a pitch or a probe or a special or a discount in many cases. 4 is it leverages technology strategically. So we're not using the technology for the sake of using technology. I'm not on LinkedIn all day just to be on LinkedIn, but I'm using it strategically. And it takes the middle path, which is about, it's not about hustling 16 hours a day today. It's not sustainable. It's actually about investing in ourselves, our mindfulness, our balance, and being productive. So walking that middle path, especially because most of us are working at home right now. So this is a definition for selling that I've been using for years. And every time I say it and I think about it and I observe opportunity around it, the more I say it, the more depth is developed. So I hope you borrow this from me, is I believe sales is actually about creating an environment so an act of faith can take place. And faith is based upon trust, and trust is based upon credibility. And I don't believe there's any true shortcut to doing this if you're going to make it real, to develop real depth and real relationships that last a lifetime. And so all of what I'm talking about here today is to help you ideally create an environment where when the time is right, your customers, prospects, markets can take an act of faith and do business with you. It's also about having faith in yourself as well, because that needs to happen in order to create that environment. So let's talk about sales process. I mentioned sales process. So this study was published by Jason Jordan in 2015 in the Harvard Business Review. He talked about the fact that there was an 18% difference in revenue growth between companies that defined a formal sales process and companies that didn't. What they also talked about is it wasn't just having a formal sales process, but it was actually having coaching, either internally from sales leader or externally from an external sales coaching organization, on those key fundamentals in your sales process. Not did you make your 30 calls today, but how did those sales calls go? What was your talking to listening ratio? What did you go through? How did you connect with that individual? So really coaching on the qualitative aspects of sales process. So it's really important in this perspective is that you have a process. Now, some of the key pieces of process, number 1, is starts with understanding your market. So right now, it feels like we have an unending amount of time, right? We're not driving to the office. We could sit in front of our computer all day, which I wouldn't advise. I think it's really important that even with an increase in the amount of time, and for some of you who got kids at home who are helping homeschooling, you're like, I've got less time, and I get that. But we look at our assets. And so we know that 80% of our opportunities are going to come from 20% of our market. And we've got these 5 assets as a sales professional or an entrepreneur, and they're ability, money, energy, time, and reputation. My question is, are we investing 80% of our ability, money, energy, time, and reputation in the 20% of the market right now that can give you 80% of your results? And this is a really key piece. So what I like to do is really divide my customer base up to help me stay focused on my prospect base. So I've got A, B's, and C's. A's are the 20%ers, are going to give me 80% of my business. B's are beneficial, which are not quite as big as A's. Maybe they take a bit longer to buy. Maybe they take a bit longer to pay. Maybe you have to do more customization with your proposals, so it takes longer to get a deal done. There's more investment and maybe a little bit less yield, but there's still a good client. And then C is convenient, and this is the customer that, if you had 6 meetings with them, over the phone and by email and via Zoom and interact with them to close them, it would take you a year to get your ROI because they're not profitable. And so your goal, especially in challenging economic times, is you need to focus on the A zone. Who are the 20%ers that can give me 80% of my results right now? And that might be different than who your 20%ers were at the top of the economy. You've got to reevaluate who they are. So I'll give you an example. If I was selling cybersecurity solutions to business organizations, and you said, hey, what kind of lead are you looking for? I could say, well, any B2B organizations that need cybersecurity. But what I'd get is I get a whole bunch of A, B's, and C's. So I really need to understand is, what does an A look like so that I can scan the market and focus my limited energy and time on that market? So The ideal client criteria, 5 million plus annually in revenues. Okay, so I'm just giving examples. I might say my ideal client is 5 million plus in revenues. The requirements have outgrown their current team or supplier. They have an immediate cybersecurity need. They've got 2 or more locations or remote staff. They already use some security solutions, and they're in the medical, food retail, e-commerce, or financial services industry, because that's who's rocking right now. And so this is an example of a definition for a cybersecurity company of who the 20% market would be right now. So I would kind of urge you to experiment, to go out there and really look and do a market scan of what do these 20%ers look like? You know, possibly restaurants for these guys, for instance, and outdoor equipment companies, and you know, other service-based organizations and conference companies with lots of attendees might have been an ideal client at the top of the economy. But now with the shift, you've also got to shift who your targets are. So a real key piece with having a solid sales process, and this is kind of a CRM rule, customer relations management tool, whether you're using Nimble or Salesforce or Microsoft Dynamics, is every contact has a value added next step booked in the CRM. So anybody I've interacted with moving forward, I need to know what my next step is. Ideally, I know it before I pick up the phone in the first place or reach out to them, but I want to make sure that as I get distracted and things are happening and I'm under stress, that I don't forget to do my follow-ups. And so follow-up and staying in touch and nurturing the leads and maintaining the attention of the customer or potential customer is vital. And so you need to have an intense, authentic lead nurturing process. So lead nurturing is just simply staying in touch, but adding value with every touch. So here's some quick stats from a Annuitas group that found that nurtured leads make 47% larger purchases than non-nurtured leads. And according to Forrester Research, companies that excel at lead nurturing generate 50% more sales leads at a 33% lower cost per lead. So this is a really interesting perspective here. So when we look at this, I think it's really important to look at the fact that we need a process for follow-up, not just an intent to follow up. Because if we lead our follow-up by our emotions, there's a good chance that if we're having a bad day or things are stressful or we get an influx of a lot of negative news, that we could maybe decide we're not going to make calls that day or follow up this week. So you need to have it drilled into a calendar or a process, but also never ever pick up the phone, get someone on a Zoom call, publish a piece of content online, especially at this time, if you don't know how it's going to add value to people's business or personal life. So my goal today as a sales professional, and this was happening, of course, you know, significantly in the last few years, but even more so now, is we need to move from being someone that explains value, like here's what you get, to being a peer and a business person that creates business value. And we create that by partnering with our customers, by understanding them better, by finding ways that we can help add value, add insights, give advice, give direction, and really be part of the vehicle that's going to get them to adapt, pivot, and redeploy. So one of the big things here is we need to change and shift and get better at selling via web meetings. So depending on the organization I work with, a number of my clients have been from, hey, we've been doing this already, so this is great, we're ready to go, to sales teams that are highly resistant, that thought, man, I have 5 more years of sales and I was going to retire and now I've got to learn all these new tools. I'm happy going face to face. And so the reality is, number one, I'm going to tell you that you can learn new tricks. Doesn't matter how long you've been doing this thing. This is, you know, what web-based meetings are going to do is that it's really the most like being in person you can be without being in person. And it has a significant advantage statistically over just a phone call. Video and the ability to connect with someone and look through the camera and get eye contact with them has a big impact. But you can also observe their body language. And the other side is that you're able to share a multimedia experience when you're selling and communicating. And so it really is something that we need to double down on and get better at versus resist. So number one, just some quick tips is, number one, set up like you're going to be on CNN. So in other words, look at your lighting, look at your background, look at your balance, think about your audio, how does it sound? Test it with a family member, test it with a coworker, invest in a good webcam, right? Think of these things that can make the difference for us. Make the tech aspect easy for your customers. So one of the things I do, I tend to use Zoom for my meetings. And so I'll actually, a day or two before my sales meeting, send someone just Zoom's test link. And I'll just say, here's where you test the Zoom software on your system. Click on it and make sure you're actually able to load it. And if you have any questions or need help, I can help you before our call. Because what you don't want is a flustered customer and you spend your sales meeting time actually reviewing how to use the technology. And then they're so frustrated by the time they start that all of a sudden you've lost some energy in the sales call. So have an agenda, know what you're going to cover. Prepare all your screens and docs first. So if you're going to share a PowerPoint and show them a video and open up a pricing document, make sure they're opened up. Because one of the things I've noticed with GoToMeeting or with Zoom is if you click and open up that file, as it loads, it uses up CPU energy or CPU power. And then what occurs, of course, is it can actually toggle the system or make it laggy. So have everything open and ready is what I'm saying, and close everything that you're not going to be sharing or using on your screen, including apps, before your meeting. Record and review it. So when it's appropriate, record your meetings. Gong.io is actually a tool that will actually record, analyze, and give you feedback on how often you talk, how often your customer talks, when you ask questions about when you're talking about pricing, how many times your competitors are answered, and it gives you suggestions based on artificial intelligence, how you could run better Zoom meetings. So kind of crazy. That's called Gong.io. And then lastly is be a 70-30 seller. So too many people get on web meetings, and what they do when they're selling to someone, a presentation like this is a little different, but when they're selling someone, they just start talking about their features. They do a feature dump. They spend very little time to say, okay, great, thanks for coming on. Let me tell you about my solution. Versus really spending a good chunk of maybe the first 15 minutes of the call. If you've got 30 minutes, I'd be spending at least the first 15 minutes asking questions, understanding where they're at, building rapport so that I understand how my solution can help them get to where they want to go, versus just spraying and praying that I'm going to hit them with a benefit that they find relatable. So, or I saw this one, and I thought this was kind of funny, as I actually saw this. We're trying to figure out how to make a conference doing more dynamic. You can spend $100 and you can have a goat or a llama come into your next Zoom meeting. I wouldn't suggest to do this all your clients, but it could be fun. So then most people don't listen, they just wait for their turn to talk. And I don't know if you felt this way, but this is one of the challenges with web meetings, is that we can get easily distracted, we can have our agenda. And so my suggestion is really practice listening. Remove all the distractions, hide all the screens. If you fidget with pens or you tend to look at things, put everything away you could fidget with, and make sure you're really focused on the person you're talking to. So we talked about 70-30 selling. I mentioned Gong as well, but what Gong has done is study of thousands and thousands of phone conversations and tied it to win rates. And what they found is that people who talk less than their customers on calls, so close more deals. People who mention price near the end of a web meeting versus at the beginning or in the middle, close more deals. People who mention their competitors one or fewer times on a call, close more deals. So think about these things as you build out your web meeting strategy. The other part is rapid response is vital, especially now that everybody's on digital platforms relating, is that they're on their computer a lot more, they're in front of their phone, they're looking for answers, and they're really looking for who's going to answer them first. So this study was done a few years back, but I'm going to argue there's probably even more so now. So the odds of contacting a new lead is 100 times greater within 5 minutes versus 30. So when that lead comes in, jump on it. The odds of entering the sales process are 21 times greater when contacted within 5 minutes versus 30 minutes. Doesn't mean you need to get them on a Zoom meeting right away, but it might mean that your email goes right out right away, and you thank them for their inquiry and you ask for an appointment, or you reach out to them via chat while they're still on your website and looking at something because they've asked a question, and engage them. So here's some thoughts about chat. I would find a way to integrate chat, Messenger, LinkedIn direct messaging into your conversations and your sales process. From an e-commerce perspective, Forrester Research found that e-commerce sites that have chat enabled have a 10% increase in the average order value and a 40% increase in conversion rate. So this is something that's really important. Now this is a business-to-business solution. Michelle Merlot, who works with MicroAge, which is a network of computer organizations across the IT companies across Canada that can help you with things like cybersecurity and going remote with your team. I clicked a link in his signature that went to his website, directly to just their main website, but they put a cookie in it so that it pops Michelle's own chat up, and it says, hey, thanks for visiting, I'm available to answer. So whenever he's on his phone, he's got it enabled. Anybody who's got his emails, if they click through, he can instantly chat with them and engage them. So they're not waiting to do it back and forth. In real time, he can engage and answer questions. And I tested it out, and he was really quick. So think about these types of tools like this, tools like Drift, to actually enable chat so you can instantly connect with people who are looking for help. This is another example. I was complaining about Thinkific. By the way, I love Thinkific, but I was having problems with their platform. It's an online learning platform that actually I host a number of my learning courses on. I'll talk about a little bit later on. But I said, hey, I'm underwhelmed with Thinkific. The other night, I spent many hours building landing pages. It kept freezing. Today, my videos aren't loading. And one of their competitors hopped in within minutes. Okay, talk about rapid response. Let us know if you need anything. This was a GIF that was there, and it was kind of funny. And I responded, said, hey, well played, thank you. But then they came back later and actually direct messaged me and said, hey, if you want to set up a demo, if you're happy with Thinkific, your present course, give us a shot for the future. And so, I got a demo booked. I'm going to check it out. Why? Because they got me when I was emotionally engaged and I was thinking about this. So these instant connections and looking at context and entry points, especially when more people are online in real time right now, it's really powerful. So social selling, does it work? Does LinkedIn and Twitter and
Hi everyone, we have noticed that we've frozen, so don't worry and hang tight. We will get this figured out shortly.
are we still live? Are we still
Yeah,
live? Are we
you're
there?
live, you're a little blurry and you froze a little bit.
All right. So let me, I had a really interesting freeze there with GoToMeeting. So I actually rebooted it. And let's take a look, make sure I'm sharing the right screen. Am I sharing the right screen? Can you all see me now?
You're just clearing up a little bit and we can see the slide perfectly.
Awesome. Wow. So that's interesting. So be prepared if things go down. That was actually another piece. So if this didn't boot up in about 2 minutes or less, I've got GoToMeeting loaded on my phone with my slides. So always have a backup with your mobile device. So that was an interesting little glitch in the system, but I'm glad we're back. So is my video on or is it not on?
Your video's on, you are a little blurry.
Okay, well, why don't I turn it off and I'll turn it back on.
Yeah.
No, you know what? It doesn't want to do that. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to do my seminar. Okay, so social selling. So CPSA and I, a couple of years ago, did a study, and what we looked at was we did a study, a poll of CPSA members. We went out to everybody, we had a few hundred responses, and we asked them, A, do you use social media for do you use social media at least on a daily basis to fill your sales pipeline, engage customers, you name it. We asked them that question, but then we also asked them, have you met, missed, or exceeded quota last year? And then the third question was, how often per day do you actually use social media? And so what we found was really interesting. Number one is that 86% of those responded. Now, out of fairness, we emailed them all, so they're somewhat digital already. Had actually accessed social media at least once daily, and 90% also met or exceeded their quota. So that's interesting. So 90% that accessed social media daily for business purposes exceeded their quota. What they also found is that 50% of non-users missed quota last year. So 50% of people who weren't using social missed quota. Now, what's interesting today is the option to use other channels other than social media to prospect are now completely removed. So that's a really kind of interesting conundrum for those that said, hey, I don't need to use this to develop a business. I can go network in person, I can pick the phone. Now we're kind of forced in this. What we also found, though, which is really important, is those that used it 1 to 3 times a day outperformed those people who didn't use it at all, or those that used it 500 times more a day. So what that means is that at some point, you can go from social networking to social not working as well. So it's really important that you use social media in a focused way to help grow your business. Here's something interesting as well. So the alternative to social media is outbound sales calls. So this is an example for mid-size organizations. The study was done by Sales Benchmark Index. And what they found was that the average sales development rep does 106 calls to get one scheduled meeting. And only 27% of those calls actually connect. And of those meetings, 31.8% of those discovery meetings set up move into late stage deals, and 19% will go on to become closed, with an average deal value in this study of $16,500. So that's a lot of activity, outbound activity to burn through. And from my perspective, what I don't like about that is it means that out of 100 prospects that I think are my ideal client, I've burned through 75% of them to get one appointment. And I really feel that social media, what that allows us to do is hit the people who are ready now, but nurture and build relationships with people who need a bit more time, which today is a situation, it's a reality. So social selling leaders get better results. This study was actually done by LinkedIn. And so what LinkedIn discovered is they looked at social selling leaders, and they said a social selling leader is someone who uses Sales Navigator, and like our study suggests that they're utilizing the platform and other social networking platforms at least once a day. They found that social selling leaders create 45% more opportunities than their peers with lower social selling success or index. Social selling leaders are 51% more likely to reach their quota, and they also found that 78% of social sellers outsell peers who don't use social media. So that's a really important, piece to look at here. And this is straight from LinkedIn, who's got some pretty deep data on their customers and who's using these platforms. So one of my goals when I talk about social selling is, how do we develop a strategy so that, and this is one of the reasons why I love social media, is that I can make cold calls all day. I can go out there and network with people. I can get through to, the decision makers proactively, but I don't necessarily want to sit on the phone all day. And so when I first got involved in social selling and social media marketing, which, goes back to 2002 when I started blogging, and 2004 when I started podcasting, in 2003 when I got on LinkedIn, my goal was, how do I develop a presence so that, yes, I can go prospect proactively, but that I can create a brand online as a sales professional that profiles me as a leader in my industry and attracts the right customer to me. And so part of it is I developed this thought leadership model that's worked really well for me and many of my clients. So I want to kind of share this with you and say, and as I talk about this, go through the checklist and go, am I doing these things with my social presence when I'm selling? And if not, then how can I do them? So number one, thought leadership. So there's three things to becoming a thought leader or an influencer in your vertical as a sales professional. And why I want to do this is I want to go from just being seen as another pitch artist to actually being a trusted advisor in the marketplace. And so great thought leaders create and curate relevant content. And so what that means is that we create and curate relevant content. And from this perspective, it means that I'm sharing content that I've found through experts, through research, through studies that are valuable to my specific market. Now, some of you, if you're a lifestyle brand, curating content is actually taking great Instagram photos from your clients or utilizing your products and living your great life, and sharing videos from health and wellness experts. That could be curating. Curating for someone who sells cybersecurity solutions in the B2B space would be curating studies and insights and tips on how to protect your business. And then also creating content. So actually beginning to create some of your own content, how-tos, helpful tools, things that entertain, engage, and develop meaning for your target market. So your content either has to help someone reach a goal or solve a problem. Those are the two big pieces in your specific target market. And in fact, ideally, your content should almost be not interesting whatsoever for anybody who's not in your target market. You want to hone it in so it speaks specifically to your market. Now, if you build it, they won't come. You need to do more than just create content. So you also, the reason why they call it social media, because it's bi-directional communications. So from a social media perspective, is they have relevant, engaging conversations. So thought leaders have relevant, engaging conversations. So that means that if you, for instance, share a piece of my content that you found, I don't just say, oh, cool, I've got to share. I'll hop on LinkedIn if you shared it, and I'll thank you, and I'll make an observation or comment or ask a question with you and your business in a way that creates some dialogue and a couple back and forths, and all of a sudden I might be able to move that into a direct private message and actually have a deeper conversation with you on LinkedIn through Messenger, and then eventually move it into a Zoom call, for instance, where we see each other face to face and make it real. And then lastly, great thought leaders also build community. So there's two aspects to build community. One is networking. So it is about constantly expanding your number of connections, your email list, your followers, all these things. But it's also about contributing. So part of that comes through content that you deliver, create, share, but it also comes from initiatives you're part of. So my suggestion is find ways to do things bigger than your brand. I've seen several clients of mine do online fundraisers, Zoom karaoke events that actually are designed to raise money for their local food bank this time, for instance. That's a community builder. The other one is what CPSA is doing right now. They've got this free webinar. They're pulling a group of like-minded people together to connect on this platform, and they're delivering value. That's another way to build community. So think about how you can do this as an individual sales professional as well. Michel Marleau, who I talked about before, has that great link in his text, in his email, where he, initiates chat. This is actually his YouTube, not YouTube, but his LinkedIn video that I saw the other day. And it was really a great video. And what he did is he didn't talk about why you should join MicroAge and why you should buy one of their franchises. What he talked about was 6 things you can do right now to hit the ground running in this particular environment. And it was designed specifically for people who sell technology solutions. And it was a really fantastic, I think it was about a 3-4 minute video, but really engaging, really hard hitting, and 100% value. So if I compared that video to somebody, talking about discounts or their latest product features, he's going to get my attention. And this is shareable, right? A lot of people share that update. So think about creating content that helps. And sometimes from a sales perspective, when I'm getting on the phone with customers, and I've got a list of senior executives I've done business with in the last 2 years, and my goal recently has just been to get on a Zoom call or a phone call with them and find out how I can help, find out how things are going. Don't talk shop or pitch right away, but really listen to what they say, make notes, engage, let them know I'm here. And if I have a creative idea right away, I might suggest it, or I might come back later on and the follow up. Here's 3 things you can do, and do you have this resource? And here's how I can help. And my goal right now is to make as many deposits and relationships as possible across the board. But after 20, 30 conversations, I've also identified 4 or 5 of them that are ready now to do business with me. And so this is the approach we need to take. How can I help? How can my content help? How can I position myself now when I have extra time to create more value-added content? So the other thing I think we need to think about really importantly, this looks like social distancing, but it's actually social proximity. It's a different thing. But social proximity is really about something that people don't leverage enough of in social media proactively. And you can do this through Facebook, you can do this through LinkedIn, you can do this through Twitter. And that's not just my connections, but my valued connections. So it's not about me being Mr. Orange and connecting with Mr. Pink and selling him something. It's actually maybe about the fact that he can introduce me to 3, 4, 5 other people that I could do business with. So what I'm doing on a daily basis on LinkedIn is I know my ideal client profile and who I want to do business with and who the positions are. I'm reaching out and I might be doing a search of 2nd and 3rd degree connections in Jacksonville, Florida, let's say, who were CPAs and CFOs, because I'm trying to sell maybe a fintech solution to this organization. These organizations. And so I'll find 2nd degree or 3rd degree connections who I have in common with people in my network, and I'll simply reach out versus directly reaching out, which I could do through LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Instead, I'm going to reach out to a common connection and say, hey, Sarah, I noticed you're connected with Shane Cormier, and I'm actually really interested in a discussion with him and his organization, figuring out how I might be able to help or collaborate with them. Would you mind making an introduction? Now, if I've done business with her and I'm credible with her, there's a good chance she's going to say yes, but she's not just going to say, hey, you should meet Shane, She's probably going to say, hey, this is the work Shane's done with us. I really trust him. Here's kind of the benefits for our organization. And I think you guys should have a conversation. So by working your 2nd degree connections, but actually proactively asking for an introduction, often an introduction is warm, and you can create that environment where an act of faith can take place a lot quicker. So that's kind of social. And what I want to kind of finish off with here and talk a little bit about, if you like some of what I had to talk about here and you wanted to go deeper into sales strategy, deeper into sales process, deeper into how to leverage tech tools, online meetings, social selling, there's a couple opportunities to do that moving forward, with a program that I'm delivering. But before that, I want to talk a little bit about just staying sane at home. So these are some of the things I've been working from home, off and on for 20 plus years. So I had an office downtown at one point for several years, but it was just a place I stored my furniture. And most of the time I worked from home, and and it was a nice place for my plant and my desk, but I was either in clients' offices or at home. And so, I pretty well made the move for the last decade where I've worked remote. And it is take a little bit to kind of stay sane when you're locked in a room by yourself all day. And so here's some thoughts for you to maybe help you survive in this time mentally is number one, have a work schedule. So we could work all day. We could answer texts and emails about work at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night. But my suggestion is work intense, work hard, work purposefully, but put a limit on your work time so that you can decompress, right? There is other stresses going on and we need time to decompress. Number two, have social media KPIs. So key performance indicators, key activities that you're gonna do. So for me, it's like I get up in the morning, I check opens and reads because I'm tracking email opens and reads. I look for comments and questions. I see who shared my content. I look at key people who I'm connected with, I want to do business with and see what they're doing. And then I leave it alone. And I come back near the end of the day and do the same thing, but I make a habit of not having these social media dashboards open all day where they're pinging me and interrupting me. Number three, if at all possible, don't work and relax in the same room. So if you tend to, like, especially your bedroom, if you have another room you can work in other than your bedroom to do your work, for instance, you might want to think of maybe separating it so that you're not sitting in the same place you were working all night to watch Netflix with your spouse after you've worked all day in that spot. Change your space. If you don't have the opportunity to do that, at least rearrange and reset and move around a bit. Number four, move every hour. So my watch reminds me, my Apple Watch reminds me to get up and move my butt every hour, and I do that. I do some stretches. I do some quick martial arts exercises to get my breathing going, and I look out the window. You know what? I move my hands and exercise a little bit just to literally get the blood flowing, change pace, and make sure I'm not totally stuck on the screen all day. And sitting all day is not good for us. If you have a stand-up desk, great. Wake up an hour or two before the rest of your family as well. So what that does is it guarantees at least a couple hours of productivity before they're all up and running around. Or stay up a little bit later than them if that's needed. Number six is limit your news consumption to twice a day and not before bed. And even your news consumption, know what you're looking for. Because in my opinion, there's just a lot of people arguing and spreading misinformation out there. And there's very little that's going to help you be successful or make your life better on there. Other than government mandates and things that happen and you need to know what's happening, I believe you need to limit at this time your negative news because it's not going to help your personal economy. And number seven is have PMA, so positive mental attitude partners, and connect regularly. So I've got 2 or 3 consultants that I know and authors that are good friends that are, in Canada and South Africa, and one down the block that I don't see in person. And we actually connect several times a week just to debrief, share success stories, be transparent about what we're struggling with, and keep each other sane. And I've found that's very, very helpful. So wrapping up, and then I'm going to open up for some questions here, is we've got a program that I put together that launches on May the 4th. And it goes from May the 4th to August 31st. So it's a 90-day sprint. And it's a webinar, not like taking up your whole life, but a webinar that's 2 hours long with a deep dive into different aspects of digital and social selling tools that you can use now to grow your business, along with a 15 to 30-minute Q&A, depending on how long the Q&A goes at the end of the session, every 2 weeks. You'll get implementation downloads and the video replays of each module, and there's going to be 10 of them, you'll have access to for an entire year. So you can go back, learn, learn, check it out. It's live or at your own pace. So if you can't make it Monday morning, but you want to go and watch it on Wednesday night, all the power to you. It's going to be there in the learning environment. And lastly, I'm doing something special for CPSA. So one of the things I want to do is for CPSA members, I want to make sure that you actually implement what you learn. So those of you who sign up for this program will also get 3 mastermind sessions. That's once a month. I get together with CPA members only who are in this program, and we spend an hour troubleshooting around and sharing success stories on how to implement what you've learned the previous month. Normally the program is $6.99, but with CPSA members, if you use the coupon code CPSA 2020, you'll get $199 off. So that's a $500 program or $168 a month. to get really 4 hours of deep dive insights on how to leverage social selling, plus one-to-one time or at least personal time with me in a small group to help you grow your business and solve key challenges you might be having at this time. So what I want to do now, here's the link, enterprisesalesacademy.com/courses/fast track. But what I'd also like to do is that kind of covers what I came here to share with you. And now I know we've got, looks like we've got about 8 minutes for Q&A. So if we put some questions in, maybe Rupalin, you can pick them and read them off to me, the ones that you like the best, and we can go from there.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much, Shane. We do have a few questions in here. So great presentation, first and foremost, commentary from one of the attendees. What do you think is the optimal time for sellers to work 12 hours, 8 hours, or 6 hours per day to maximize productivity? Also for outreach, are there better times in the day to do that, for sending emails on LinkedIn messages, for example, or to deliver Zoom presentations, mornings versus afternoons? Any thoughts on an ideal length of meeting?
Okay, let's start with the first question. So what was the first question?
The first question was, what do you think the optimal time for sellers to work is? 12 hours, 8 hours, 6 hours per day to maximize productivity.
You know, I think that it's a combination of how your nervous system works, number one. You know, some people actually can work intensely for extended periods of time and not burn out. And they tend to be more extroverted and organized and bottom line type personalities. And then those of us who are more extroverted, but you know, maybe more big picture personality and more people oriented, you know, tend to not be able to sustain that without burning out. And so I would say that during times of crisis and stress, you know, you've got to limit the intensity and hard work time. You know, so my thoughts are like, I don't think that if you're working 12 hours a day, that 14 is going to get you more results, bottom line. I would say 8 hours is a good work day with good breaks in it, stretching and moving and shifting gears, right? You can't be just all doing one task. So, you know, 8 to 12 hours a day. But you know what, my optimal time as an entrepreneur is, you know, for years, I've always worked 4 days a week. I work intensely 4 days a week. I put a ton of energy behind it. There's a ton of output. And I actually found that giving myself a day a week off to be creative, to do my martial arts, to do my hiking, to write, to go spend quality time with other entrepreneurs actually made me more money and more effective. So you've also got to know what your own kind of personal circadian rhythm is from a business perspective. And then your other two questions were, if I was recall, is like, when's the best time to prospect and when's the best time to do Zoom webinars? And so, you know what, one of the things that we look at is that what's different today is that people aren't away from the computer. They're in front of it all the time. So there's a good chance that when your email goes out, they're going to be in front of it and they'll probably see it come down and open it. What I wouldn't do is maybe send them late at night or early in the morning, because then your email is stuck with all the other people who send a bunch of emails late at night. So there's like 30 of you come down at once, and that executive has to go through them. I would kind of at least figure out when the beginning of their day is, when they get into their office. That's when they're checking their email. I would send it kind of a half an hour after that. I found like 9:30 a.m. is a really good time to hit a mid-manager or someone like that. Senior execs, I find, tend to roll in the office a little earlier than the rest of their team, for instance. You know, also think about when people have their team meetings. You know what? So Mondays and Fridays tend not to be great times to pull people into meetings for a sales perspective. They're focused on other stuff. So, you know, I would look at times that typically people don't use for meetings that they're using to decompress. So, you know, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, 10 o'clock on a Tuesday. But you know what? That depends upon the business. My suggestion is just to use a tool like Calendarly to send them an option to pick 2 or 3 options, or say, hey, there's 3 different times that you can pick here. So that would be my suggestion there. Did I answer all those questions?
I think you got them all.
Good questions, by the way.
Yeah, they were great. The next one here is, I think, an important one that a lot of people are feeling. So what do you say to salespeople who feel their customers and prospects don't want to hear from them during these trying times?
I think your customers and prospects don't ever want to hear from you as a salesperson. And what I mean is, if you're a typical pitchy, prober salesperson who's out to sell something, and you've got commission breath and they can smell it all over you, then just don't call people. They're going to smell the desperation. They're going to smell that it's what's in it for you. So if you apply what I talked about earlier, creating an environment or an activation can take place, knowing how you can help people, genuinely, if you send me an email wanting a meeting and it's the same email you send everybody else, forget about it. But if you send me an email saying, dear Shane, I observed you got a program launching on this date, looks awesome. I really appreciate the content you've been bringing on LinkedIn as well to help the sales community. I had a few ideas how my web conferencing company or my marketing group can maybe help or partner with you and grow your community. Would you have a few minutes to connect on that? I'd be like, yes. Why? Because you noticed what I was into. You might even state a problem. You know, many people like you, as you get going, start to lose the ability to actually handle all the leads that come in. We have a way we can help you with that. And so again, it's about observing me, talking about a challenge I might have, and not let's talk about me doing a demo. Let's hop on a conversation and see if now or sometime in the future we might be able to work together. And then once you start the interaction, is think about value-added content. And so you know what, sales people don't want to hear from salespeople. They want to hear from people who are a resource who can help them grow their business. So you've got to personalize it. You got to take the time to do research and reach out contextually, right? And that's why social signals, using a tool like LinkedIn Sales Navigator, when I see you've done a press release, or when I can see you've posted new content and I interact at that time and enter on context, then I can win. And so you've got to, as a sales leader, equip your sales team with lots of value-added materials, insights, tools to add value as well. So as an organization, how can we as a team add value to our prospects' lives before we go ask them for something? That would be my suggestion.
Thank you. Do we have time for a couple more, maybe, Shane? Maybe one more?
Oh yeah, we've got time for 2-3 questions. Absolutely.
Awesome.
We've got time.
Okay, perfect. So we've got the next one here. How do you handle customers that don't see or understand the value of social media to grow their business and reach more customers?
So I think that's interesting. So I asked Gary Vaynerchuk that same question. Boy, that was actually 8 years ago when we brought him to Vancouver to speak at a conference. And Gary Vaynerchuk, if you're not familiar, founded Wine Library TV. He grew his family liquor store from $5 million to $50 million a year in revenues using social media. He now owns a digital agency that's got 300 plus employees and has written, half a dozen books on social media marketing. But so when I said to him, because I was a partner in a digital agency at the time, I said, Gary, how do I convince people who don't believe in social media? And he said, at first he said to me, just don't do business with them. Go find people who want help with social media. So get better at targeting and listening and finding those markets that want help and get it. I said, well, that's nice because you're famous and you've been on Jay Leno and everybody wants to work with you, but I need that prospect to convert. And he laughed and said, well, tell them I said this, that saying you don't believe in social media is like saying you don't believe in the internet, because the internet is social. And the voice and sentiment of the crowd is more important than what the experts say or what you say. And so if we think about it, when I go to choose a new restaurant, I'm not seeing what the experts say. And I'm not going to their website to see what they say about themselves. I'm going to Google places, or I'm going to Yelp to find out what other people say about that brand. When I decide to do the old business with somebody, I'm going to see what other people had to say about them. And what's interesting is that 80%, you can tell your customer this, that 80% of the customer buying cycle is now finished before they contact us. They're self-educators. And either you're going to self-educate them with your social media marketing content, or your competitors are. And so having a strong, aggressive, proactive social media content strategy and engaging people before they start thinking about doing business with us or using our products is vital. You got to get there before the other guy. So that's some of my thoughts around that. And there's just data out there. I mean, there's incredible data on the benefit of social media. There's tons of studies, and I use a lot of other organization studies to convince my clients and show them the value of using everything from LinkedIn to you name it, right? You saw me use stats from 4 different organizations here. So I didn't do those studies. I did 1 of 5 studies I shared today. The other ones I found from reputable sources, third party, that can share that this is a valid approach, right? So it's a challenge. At this day and age, if they don't believe in social media, they're going to be roadkill on the information highway pretty quick, because it is now one of the only ways to reach customers, especially in this lockdown.
Absolutely.
All right, we've got, it's 11. I'll go a little bit over time, do one more question, and then wrap it up.
I think the next one is a perfect one to end off with because I'm sure a lot of people are wondering. So my goal is to set up in-person meetings to travel once the travel ban ends. What is the best way to communicate setting up a meeting for future time that's unknown? Is the best way to be specific with that you would like to set up a meeting?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's a challenging one because, depending upon where in the country you live, and then what country you're traveling to, all bets are sort of off for travel. So, we can see that, in Saskatchewan with, low number of cases that's happening right now, that they're talking about reopening the economy carefully, for instance, much sooner than some of the other provinces. At least that's what they're talking about right now. And so there's that unknown, like what does it really look like, right? So we're going to slowly reopen the economy, and so that's a challenge to set a specific date. So what I would do is, I would do as much of your interaction as you can by video, right? Think about how you can virtually share what you would normally do in person, and everything from demos, you name it. And then I would maybe set the intent that, yeah, like let's say to be safe, let's say that we're gonna meet in person in October in Austin, Texas, and let's set a time and a date, or maybe we set the goal for September, the beginning of September, which is probably a pragmatic, not pessimistic or optimistic time frame. And just get permission. Say if we open up sooner, we can move it to August, and if we don't, if it has to be delayed, we'll push it forward. But let's set a time in the calendar, and if you have to change it for whatever reason, just email me and give me the new time. And I mean, I do that anyways with clients if I'm booking well in advance. Is that we set the tentative time so that we both make it a priority in our calendar. So when things open up, we're ready. But that's a tough one. But in between now and then, you've got to find ways to lead nurture to keep top of mind. They're not going to keep that appointment if you set it and then leave them alone for 60 days. You're going to need to think about 5 or 6 value-added interactions, studies, insights, ways you can help, educational tools, you name it, client success stories that you can send through between now and that meeting time to really keep that prospect hot, because I believe that mind share equals wallet share. And today, it's kind of heart share, actually. It's about winning the hearts of our customers and our prospects. And so today is about not just value-added marketing content, it's about value-added help, engagement, deepening the relationship. And I think that will, whoever has the biggest heart share of the customer as the market turns around is going to win. And actually, with your existing customers, when they're cutting budgets, those that you can connect with the most, both business-wise, but also personally, when they make the hard decisions about what budgets to cut, at least you get a chance, right? And so that's one of the other important pieces. So once again, really appreciate you all logging on today and sharing an hour of your time with us. And I know this program is being recorded, and so there'll be a replay available as well. For those of you who want to spend some more time with me and really dive deep into learning about social selling, love to have you in our Fast Track to Social Sales Success program. Starts on May the 4th. If you got any questions, you can reach directly out to me. @Shane Gibson is my URL on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Twitter. You can email me, shane@shanegibson.com. And with any questions that you have. And beyond that, Rupalin, thank you so much for inviting me in today. And I'm glad that little glitch was just a little glitch, and that we kept going. So that was fantastic.
Thank you so much, Shane, on behalf of the CPSA. Thanks so much for taking the time to share your strategies and tips with us. I know how valuable they are to the sales community right now, so we can't thank you enough. And we hope everybody has a great day. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.